Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Oh, sorry.
Welcome on the second to last day before winter break. Thank you, Matt. First thing I think that we need, maybe we can do introductions first. So we'll just go around and briefly everybody introduce themselves. I'm Molly Abraham, school board member.
Kim Colvin, board secretary.
Dina Malone, board president.
Matt Digner, hi everybody.
Mary Kate Pilcher-Hayek, board member.
Jane Finch, board member.
Lisa Williams, board member. Ashling Beck, ELL teacher at Longfellow.
Lydia Crow, also ELL teacher.
Kelly Webb, proud principal, Longfellow Elementary. Welcome.
Sheila Niels, ELL coordinator.
Kimberly Grage, ELL assessment specialist.
Eliza Proctor.
Amy Courtmeyer.
Lucas Patacha.
Brady Shep.
Chase Whitney. Charlie Eastham, board member.
Laura Walhart, IDS of Longfellow
Okay, we just have a short matter of business we need to approve the minutes from our October meeting, which was at Liberty. Do I have a motion to do that?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We just do it for
All in
both.
favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably just flip to the team right away. I don't know, Amy, if you want to do extended introductions or if we're just turning it to Kelly and gonna jump in, but go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for being here tonight. We're excited to showcase our English Language Learners program in the district. And the first half of the presentation, if you did it at all, is really a district level overview. And so Kim and Sheila are gonna take us through that. And then we'll follow it up with a look at Longfellow Elementary and their implementation and a little bit about their English language learner program. But Kelly did a nice job of setting her beginning part of her presentation up, just telling you a little bit about Longfellow itself. So without any further ado, I'll kick it over to Sheila and Kim.
Maybe I will say one thing. These guys are awesome. Like, if you think about what's happened to the ELL population in the district and how it's exploded, you know, when we looked at that 20-year enrollment, when we were talking about budget stuff here a couple weeks ago, over that period of time, if you would overlay our ELL population on top of that and just see what's happened, I mean, that's been a huge ramp up of services that's not only impacted the people, you know, that you're going to hear from first, but all the way down to this classroom implementation we're going to talk about, because it's totally changed, you know, the way they're thinking about teaching and learning. And so I can't give a big enough shout out to these guys about how they've stood up that system and made it work. And you're going to hear too, it's improved instruction for all kids is the cool thing about it. About anything we do for ELL kids improves instruction for all kids. So I did need to get that in there because you guys have been doing great stuff.
That's wonderful. So again, my name is Kimberly Grage. I'm the ELL assessment specialist. So I oversee all of the screening assessments when we have new to district students come in. Make sure they get placed into EL services if they qualify and if they are placed appropriately based on their English proficiency level. And then I also coordinate the annual ELPA 21 assessment that we use. That is a state mandated test to monitor the growth of the English proficiency of all of our English learners. And that's the sole exit criteria as well for getting out of the ELL program and being deemed English proficient. And then we monitor them for 2 years to make sure they are succeeding in their classes. In addition to the assessment part of my job, I kind of tack on like assessment and data specialist because I do a lot with data as well. And so I wanted to present just some quick facts, a little overview for you. So you have a kind of a picture of what we have in our EL program for the district. So this is not Longfellow specific, this is just district-wide data. And so we currently have 1,940 English learners. That's constantly changing. I just screened 6 today, so actually that number now is up. So that's every day we're getting more and more. And we also have some who transfer out, and so it's constantly fluctuating. We do have more than 65 different language and cultural backgrounds represented within our ELL department. At the district level, it's actually more. We're in the 70s once you get into like just all students in the district, not just those in the ELL program. And our English learners represent roughly 13% of our student population. And of those 13%, we have students who, even though they're ELL eligible, not all of them actually receive services. Some of them waive services. And so of that 13, 12% would be those who receive services, and then 1% waive services. At any time during the year, their families could decide for them to receive services. And then I always find this interesting. I monitor this to see our EL percentage in each school. This does not represent numbers, right? I mean, if you look at Hills, even though Hills is at the top with 42%, it's one of our smaller programs just because of numbers. But it is a very large percentage of their school population, all the way down to Penn at 2%. If you look at actual numbers, West High at 11%, they have our highest number of ELL eligible students. However, many of them waive services. 27% of West High students waive services right now. And so Weber wins the award for actually serving the highest number of students at 140. 140 students Weber serves. But that just represents 24% of their population. If you look at kindergarten's about 50-50. 50% English learners and 50% non-English learners go Weber. And so if you're interested in different schools around the district, you can just find out where they are.
So Kelly, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So for the increase in numbers of English language learners in a given year, does that represent new students to the district or new students in the ELL program?
So both. So when they come new to our district, and they enter our ELL program.
Okay. But so to all the new students in the ELL program, are they new to the district?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of any exceptions to that.
Waive services and now come in.
Yes, but they would still be in that number, because that number includes ELL eligible students.
Or unless there would be some reason that their home language survey was filled out incorrectly and we're not aware of them, and then we become aware of them through interacting with the family or whatever, and then find out about them and screen them. Because they're screened as soon as they enter the district if we know they speak another language.
Maybe share a little bit about the 5 years that we can count them and 4 years previously. Is that also impacting the 1940?
No, so this number is what we have as identified as English learners receiving services or eligible for services.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with funding.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anything else about these numbers? I have more numbers to share. Don't worry. Okay. So thinking about our enrollment, we capture enrollment officially at the October 1st count date. At this year, October 1st, 2022, we were at 1913. As you can see, we're actually higher now, the number I shared on the previous slide. And you can see how it's grown through the years. We've had a few shifts in how English learners have been counted or been able to have been counted. Here we had a shift as well as here. And I don't know enough about that information. I was not actually in the ELL realm during those years. I was teaching, but just not in ELL. But I do know that it's been more consistent over these years. You can see that we've pretty much had an upward trend for the last 2 decades. And we anticipate that it will continue to be that way.
So, Matt, do we have any idea why in the last 10 years or so there's been a consistent increase in numbers of students that are ELL qualified?
I think it just speaks to that conversation we've had before, Charlie, about when we look at our growth and where the growth in our student population actually is, it's in our diversity, right? And so that would just mirror the growth that we're seeing in that diversity, and then some of those diverse students also present as ELLs, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Please. So our most common home languages that we are seeing among our English learners, and also you see ELs and ELL used sometimes, and we do use them interchangeably, but really ELL is the English Language Learning Program. That's typically what we use ELL for. ELs would be our English learners. So, but you can also call them ELLs, some people do, it's fine, but that's why you might see both of those. So Spanish is our most common home language, followed by Arabic, French, Swahili, and then Chinese and Ewe would be our last 2 there. And then we have tons of other languages, but maybe just, a few or 5 or 10. So when we translate things in this district, we translate them into our top languages.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
As a teacher, and I don't even know, do the dialects fall into some of these as well? The different dialects of these languages? Like we know we have students that speak a dialect of French, or it will, so if you translate things into French, they will understand some of it, but it's not really their language.
So this language data would be pulled from how it's entered into Infinite Campus.
Okay.
So it's whatever the family identified on their home language survey as their home language, that's how it's entered into Infinite Campus. That's a good question. And our EL's most common birth countries, a lot of times this takes people by surprise that the majority of our English learners were born here in the United States. 52% of them. And then the Democratic Republic of the Congo would be next, Sudan, Honduras, Tanzania, Guatemala, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Togo, and El Salvador. So you can see it's primarily United States, and then some African countries and Central American countries. And then Saudi Arabia as well. All right, and then Sheila's gonna take you through some of our LAU plan and our standards.
Yeah, you can go ahead. So, gosh, should I stand up? Stand up or sit down? Okay. Again, my name is Sheila Niels, and I'm the ELL coordinator for the district. So, again, just to take you through some of the documents that maybe just give a little more information about the program in general. So the LAU plan, this is required for every district to have a plan in place that basically identifies how we are providing services for our English language learners. So you can go ahead and click on that. So if you click on that, it'll take you directly to our website. Oh, and that nice little message.
There we go.
We get that reminder and a little smile on our faces.
You know what? I forget.
Brought to you by.
So yes, so this is a document that is updated every single year. So it can take us anywhere from, and it's about 21 pages, but if you would like some reading to do, since we have a couple extra days, this just gives information of how we screen students, identify students, the programming that we do at each of the levels of our schools, the materials that we're using, our minutes of instruction, and then all the way to what happens to students that when they exit the program, and it gives all that information. So as you can see, it's all listed here. So yeah, that's available. And go ahead and go back. And then we have something else we linked in here is just what guides us in our instruction, our ELP standards. So there's a document there. And if you kind of scroll down just a little bit so we can kind of point some of these out. So really and this is just an example. So right now, the standards that guide our instruction, that we align our instruction to, we have 10 different standards. And within those 10 standards, the different domains. So there could be listening and speaking could be for one specific standard. So some of the domains overlap within the different standards that are listed here. So this is kindergarten, for example. So as you can see, like our standard 1 for kindergarten, and then these are the different proficiency levels. So obviously we want our students to get to this level 5. So what's great about this and having these proficiency levels in place is that when we identify a student that might be more at a level 1 or a level 2 when they're coming to us, if they're newcomers, we know exactly what they need to be working on in order to get to that next level of proficiency. So then we're able to, with building goals and set some of those goals within buildings, but then also for our district. So, but then those are in grade level bands. So kindergarten would be 1 grade level. Then we have first grade, and then grade levels 2 and 3 are in the same band, 4 and 5, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. So those are all on this document here. And currently, that's some of our work that we're doing, with identifying priority standards this year, kind of working on that level 3 of the HRS, and that guaranteed and viable curriculum. So we've had a lot of discussion with our elementary and secondary teams, diving in a little bit deeper to really understand, what our standards are and how we're going to get our students to that level 5. So it's been great. It's been great work that we've been doing so far. All right, and then we'll go back. And then some of this information is obviously outlined within our LAU plan, but just to put it on here as just models of our instruction, what we're doing right now. Overall, elementary is a pull-out. What we provide services is what we call pull-out programs. So we are giving those minutes of instruction in English language development within a small group that's outside of the classroom, that's not during core instruction. But we do have some buildings, just because of numbers or needs of students, that are doing some co-teaching and pushing in, which you'll hear a little bit later. And then our secondary, to get those ELD instructions or those English language development instruction, is they are assigned an actual course within their schedule. So if they are a level 2 student, they might be assigned an intermediate 1 or intermediate 2 English language development class, and that's a part of their schedule for each trimester. And then our materials that we're currently using right now, we're using the National Geographic, and we have the 3 different levels. So REACH would be K6 that we're using at the elementary level. Insight is for our junior high 7-8, and then EDGE is for 9-12. But we currently are going through our ELL program review right now, so we're in that year 2, where we're getting feedback from students, families, and teachers. So we're kind of in that phase right now of just gathering some feedback through our surveys. So any questions about kind of like the overview of the district before we move on to Longfellow?
So when you mentioned survey, I mean, think about results, outcomes. Are we going to hear what your outcomes are from your surveys?
Absolutely.
Great.
So we are currently, I think, well, and we had until I think the ending date or the closing date will be the 23rd. But then we're going to look over those results for each of the set of survey questions and see what that outcome is.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe this is something you're going to talk about, but when you talk about leveled English language development for the secondary, I work with some high school kids from all 3 different high schools, and they talk about how they, and I might not get this right, they can't do electives because they have to do ELLs only offered during those. And does it take like 2 electives worth of time or something like that? How does that work?
No, that's a great question. So if they are a beginner student, they're coming to us and they're just emerging, like they need a lot of support with their English language development, then there are 2 periods. We call that the beginner course, and 2 periods are designated for that instruction and that support that's needed. Because some of it could be, just the reading foundation or just supports, and that in addition to just the daily, kind of survival skills kind of things that they're being taught in those 2 periods. So that is the only time when they're assigned to a beginner course where it'd be 2 periods. Otherwise, the rest of the courses are just a 1-period course. So that, yes, and we have heard that with some of the scheduling, and that has been a concern with some of our teachers, is that because the ELD course is considered an elective, what they get elective credit for, and that might take the place of something else just because of scheduling. They might not have an opportunity, but however, it's still something that they need.
And then something else that's related to that is, and maybe you're going to get to it, so
No, that's
ignore me
okay.
if you want, how to get out. Because a lot of the students that I have spoken to and their parents don't necessarily understand how to get out. And of course the parents have language barriers. So that it's not necessarily something they're able to click on and read thoroughly and whatever.
Absolutely.
So yes, that's something else that, they hate missing their electives, because for some of these people, just like all people, that's where they find
Yes.
their something. And so, they don't want to do it any longer than necessary.
Correct. In order to exit the program, the only criteria that the state has right now is that they score proficient on the summative ELPA 21 assessment. So they would have to have 4s and 5s, what we call 4s and 5s within the 4 different domains in order to exit. And then once they exit, then they no longer have to be enrolled in an ELD course. And it's not necessarily mid-year, because again, that assessment's taking place in the spring, but then it would be for that following year where they would then not have to be enrolled if they end up exiting the program.
Could their parents alternatively just say, forget it, we're going to waive it?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we really encourage our teachers to do goal setting with our students. Make them aware of, because it's 1 data point that they just have to pass in order to, exit out of the program. And we really encourage our teachers to, take them through their previous year scores, identify on those proficiency scales where they need to be working on in those targeted areas. And then, once they take the summative, then we hope that, there's celebrations, we want to make sure that they're aware of, how they performed. But really, those conversations take place once we get those scores back. Reaching out to families, reaching out to, guardians and saying, they still qualify. What would you like to do for next year? So we're getting that feedback after every time the students are taking that assessment.
Great.
Yeah.
So 2 things. Oh, sorry, Charlie.
Well, conversely, can students elect to stay in the program even though they're scored proficient?
So after they exit, I mean, that's
Or after
it's a
they-
victory in itself. So then that's a celebration that they are ready, and although they still might need some, supports or some accommodations that are made, but then that's the goal. We want them to be exited out of the program, and we do continue to monitor their progress for 2 years afterwards. Yep.
Sorry, man.
That's okay. So one would be, and I'm asking for perception probably more than data because I don't think you have that here for us tonight, but difficulty about being able to score out, right? To get those 4s and 5s without the difficulty around that. I think I know what you're going to say. And the second one is about our ability to encourage or discourage continuation in the program, right? And that kind of goes back to some of the state's history around ELO programming and having a allow plan and what we're allowed to do or not do in those conversations with families.
Correct. That's, yes. I'm going to say what we have looked at, and in all transparency, but it's really looking at, when you're thinking about exiting or how difficult it is, sometimes it's student motivation. And just, why do I have to do this? Do I have to take this test? And that's again why we're really wanting our teachers to encourage, looking at that growth and like, oh my goodness, look at this, look what you did from last year to this year, and look what you can do, continue that growth there. So motivation is one, and especially a lot of our students that have chosen not to be in those services and, with waivers and just like, oh, you just, you're so close, you're doing so well in all your classes, but it's just like this one test. Yes. So, and in that case, I think that's maybe why we have so many students that do waive, because they find, and maybe they're not great test takers, and it's just maybe test anxiety, things like that, that make, that make even more difficult. Did I answer your question? I know that was maybe one part. What was the next part?
The discouraging people are you have to be careful because of the
walking
law.
that line. I mean, it sounds like what you guys do, right, is that we sit down with the family, we show them, hey, here's where you're at, here's where what the goals could be, what do you want to do, and kind of ask
And we
that
say,
question.
and yes, because that's been something where it's not, we always want that option. We present the facts, here's where they're at, here's what we can do to support and continue, but ultimately it is the family's decision on what they would like to provide for their student. Some of the conversation that is really helpful is just knowing that if you decide, like first trimester or the beginning of the year, that you say, you know what, we don't need the support right now. However, if they find out through parent-teacher conferences, or you can always, as long as you qualify, you can always opt into the program. And that's been something that some of our families have taken advantage of too. It's like, let's try it without and see. However, they still qualify. They'll still have to take the assessment, in the spring, but it's ultimately their decision. And we can just present the facts and how we can continue to support, but really it's the family's decision. Yeah.
So we see a lot of data, and I'm guessing maybe at some point in time we'll see, not necessarily today, but data of who successfully completes the program. But listening to you, it sounds like there are a few reasons why someone we may consider a success but didn't successfully complete the program. How are those individuals reported out? Are they reported as opt-outs and that's a separate category? Are they reported as unsuccessfully completing the program? Just to help me understand when I see that data what it really means.
We've really kind of looked at even more long term, like because when you think about some of our English language learners, and we've really even broken it down because a lot of our junior high and high school teachers are thinking, this student's been in ELL since kindergarten. Here they're coming to us in 9th grade. What are some things? And this is the type of feedback. And I'm sorry if this isn't answering your question, but it's maybe going along the right path here. But getting that feedback of what do we need to do as our department to help in that way with long-term ELs that might not be motivated and not wanting to perform well in the test. So that's the type of feedback that we're getting from teachers right now, to be like, what are you seeing with your students? We're getting out into the classrooms and observing and understanding that it's really kind of looking, and I know I pointed at Kimberly because she's the data person and gathering that information, but that's what we're diving into a little bit more, is finding more answers like that as far as what that looks like for our long term. I'm probably not answering your question right now.
I just want to know how to critically absorb this data. So am I going to see either pass and fail, and then I need to understand that in that fail we have parents who have voluntarily opted out, who necessarily haven't failed through the program. It's what you said, maybe they're bad test takers and they've benefited as much as they want to, and now they want to take electives at the high school level or whatever, but we can consider them successes, but they don't pass the test. I'm just trying to,
I can speak to that a little bit. So
Yeah.
we focus in the state as well on growth more than proficiency.
okay,
Because they know the students come to us at all different proficiency levels and with different educational backgrounds. And so they're wanting to make sure that no matter where they're coming from, when they get to our district, we are growing them, right? And so that's what we really look at every year and put a lot of like attention into and goal setting action steps around the growth piece. And then we do have a certain percentage that reaches proficiency every year and they exit the program. And the state tracks that as well, but they don't use that like to determine the Iowa School Performance Profile determinations and things like that. They're looking, for the yellow part, they're looking at the growth only.
Okay.
But if they don't take the test, how are you assessing their
They're all
growth?
supposed, we try to get to
Yes.
100% participation in the test. So even if they waive services, they still take the ELPA 21 summative assessment, even if they waive services.
Okay,
Because
so
that's-
that blew my mind a little bit. So, okay, but just so I understand, because again, I mean, we hear a lot about this from the students, the high school students, who say that that test is harder than any English test they've ever taken.
It's hard.
It is.
If they
So-
pass it, I mean, there are students who are proficient on the ISASP but are not on the ELPA 21.
Yeah, so
That's
that's,
what I was trying to get to. Is a little bit of, I don't want to say it's unrealistic, but the standard that I think we're expecting of our ELs to be able to pass that, it's high standard, right? I mean, I think
I
some
think
of
there's
our
a
kids.
purpose behind it.
Yeah.
They're wanting to make sure that we are providing supports to them legally until it is very evident they no longer need them.
And that's-
If they
I-
pass that test, it's like, they really should not be serviced.
I think that's great, and I obviously think you guys are experts at this. I'm only asking questions because there's still some gray area for me here. The students we've spoken to are fluent in English and have lived here forever and will tell me they can't pass that test. So they're gonna waive it. They're not gonna go in. They're not gonna do it. So, two things. I still don't understand how, okay, so if they're in the class, they take the test no matter what, you just said,
If they're eligible.
If they're ELL eligible.
If they're eligible
To
for
find out
ELL,
if they're-
then they take the test, everybody.
There's two
So
kinds
to
of
Right,
Lisa's
tests.
but-
question, even if they defer services, they're still gonna take
Yeah.
the test, and
Yes.
so we're not really gonna see two different data sets that way. The only
Right.
ones that wouldn't to no longer take the test is if they would have scored that they've
Correct.
passed, right?
Yeah, they
okay, so
scored
there is
Yeah.
some blackness there. Okay, so
And I think
then,
the hard thing with the kids is once they become conversational with their English, then they're gonna feel like some of this other instruction isn't necessary, right? But we can all imagine learning another language and then being able to do the academic work with that language versus the academic work in your
Exactly.
native
It's the
language is
academic
gonna be
reading and
completely
writing.
different, right?
That keeps them in the program.
or
they
just
may
like
speak
for
very, very
English
well.
speakers too. I mean,
Exactly.
it's different for us to speak versus
Exactly.
learn grammar.
Yeah.
I mean, who can diagram a sentence in the room? So then,
I can.
if.
I've learned that in sixth grade.
Yeah, so then my final question, I apologize for taking up the time, is if you're in the elective, but then you don't take that test at the end, electives are pass, fail, and so do they get credit for it? Or, I don't understand.
Electives are
The
graded.
test is not tied to the class.
So if it's
the grade of the
not-
class.
Yeah.
It's kind of like AP. Like you could not pass the AP test but still get an A in the AP class.
Got it. That's what I needed to know.
Okay.
Thank you. Done. Sorry, I get it now.
I appreciate the questions, it's great, absolutely.
All right. So switching gears, because that was a lot about secondary. So we're going to talk about elementary, what's happening here. But I do want to take the time to thank you for coming and caring for our staff and kids, the board especially. I know you guys put in a lot of your extra time, and also just a chance for us to share our story tonight and to share a little bit about the great things that are happening at Longfellow, especially with our ELs. And so we're going to start with an overview of Longfellow's student population, because there was a shift about 5 years ago and how that continues. We're going to talk a little bit about PSYOP and what's happening with our co-teaching, and hopefully some push in, as we know that that is actually the best model to do. So again, I'm just going to kind of talk about the shift in the last 5 years for Longfellow specifically. That was due to the boundary changes, if you might remember, if you were part of the board or remembering how that affected the district. And that definitely changed our population and what we do as educators and respond to students' needs here at Longfellow. So our population grew anywhere from about that 300 to over the 400 mark. Our diversity changed as well. We had a shift as well. And then again, we also grew in our ELL and our languages at Longfellow, anywhere from about 10 students about 5 years ago to over 80 today, and over 18 languages spoken here. And our FRL also shifted, about 26% to about 54. Our special education grew. And academically, that also has effect as your population adjusts and changes. Then again, we have to be responsive and change as well. But our main thing when we think about what this is us now is that these numbers, even though separated, we have to be very cognizant about how they're also intertwined. And so when I think our ELL students, also some of them are FRL students, and just all of that kind of plays amongst each other as we make decisions and about our instruction and what's best for our students. But our bigger point that I really want to make about our team and about our staff in this last 5 years of our shift is that, oh, that's lovely. I'm just going to say, okay, hopefully in an hour it'll start over. Is that we really view our EL students as an asset, not as the deficit model, which I think can come when we think about some of those challenges or barriers that students bring to the table, having the language barriers sometimes. And again, we think that they provide and contribute to the richness of our school. So, and we've just really had that mindset. Even when we knew that we were having this shift, as you see with our numbers, our teachers were very open-minded. What do we need to do? What do we need to learn? How can we support all students? And all students to feel welcome and inclusive, right? Like that's part of HRS Level 1. We want to be an inclusive environment for all. And so that's kind of our point two today and how that works and reflects in our practices, which is what's going to be shared from our wonderful team. I just want to check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything, because I probably could talk about our team and what happens at Longfellow forever, so I just want to make sure that I talk about. That's mainly it, and then I will wrap us up later. So who is up and you told me to click? Okay, go to the next slide.
Hi, I'm Lydia Crow. I'm an ELL teacher, +1 here. I'm going to talk a little bit about our PSYOP strategies, and I'm going to explain what that means. But I'm going to try to put you in the shoes a little bit of a new ELL student, and I'm going to explain PSYOP, demonstrating what a traditional instruction, super traditional instruction might look like for one of those students. Then I'm going to explain it again using some of our ELL strategies. Alright, so PSYOP. PSYOP es una estructura de enseñanza que es validada y basada en años de investigación. Consiste en 8 componentes: preparación de lecciones, construcción de contexto, lenguaje comprensible, estrategias, interacción, práctica y aplicación, instrucción y repaso y evaluación. Got it? Ready for the quiz? Okay. So I'm gonna try that again.
Because I don't even know if I'm changing the slide or not. I don't know if there's any keywords.
We're gonna try that again. If you change the slide, please. Okay.
Do you go ahead and change the slide?
Yes. Okay. So PSYOP. PSYOP es una estructura de enseñanza. Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. Ayuda mucho a nuestros estudiantes de inglés. Es validada y basada en investigación. Can you change the slide, please? PSYOP consiste en 8 componentes. Aquí hay los 8 componentes. Número 1, preparación. Necesito ser preparada para mi instrucción. Número 2, contexto. Contexto. Nuestros estudiantes necesitan saber el contexto. Lenguaje comprensible. ¡Ajá! Comprendo este lenguaje. Comprensible. Número 4, estrategias. Necesito tener muchas estrategias para planear mi instrucción. Número 5, interacción. Nuestros estudiantes necesitan hablar con otros estudiantes para entender. Número 6, práctica y aplicación. Número 7, instrucción. Y número 8, repaso. Necesito repasar para entender. ¿Ok? Vamos a practicar nuestro vocabulario. Número 1, preparación. Repite. Preparación. Número 2, contexto. Contexto. Número 3, lenguaje comprensible. 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 Muy bien, muy bien. Estrategias. Estrategias. Interacción. Práctica. Instrucción. Y repaso. Okay. Which one did you understand better? Number 1 or number 2?
Yeah.
What helped you understand? What kinds of things helped you out? with that?
Pictures.
Pictures, definitely. What else?
You spoke much slower.
Yes, we gotta slow down. Yeah. Anything else? Gestures.
In both languages?
Even using some dual language support. And I'm lucky that I can speak Spanish, but this is something teachers could do with Google Translate. There's resources they can get, bilingual classroom labels, or even seating students next to someone who speaks that language who are more advanced so that they can discuss what the instruction was and what they're talking about. So there's all sorts of, it's a big thick book, all sorts of strategies we can use with SciOp to help our students. And the great thing is that the research shows that not only our ELL students, but everybody benefits from that, because that academic language is a second language for everybody when they come in. This is not how we talk to each other on the playground, right? So this is why we've also been exploring co-teaching with our classroom teachers, and Ms. Beck is going to tell us, Aisling is going to tell us a little more about that.
Yep. Okay, so kind of keeping with that SciOp spirit, I'm going to have us do a gesture anytime we hear a derivative of the word collaborate. And so I want everyone to go like this for collaborate, and we can be thinking working together. We do a lot of gestures as ELL teachers because we know that when the students are doing gestures while we're speaking, it's adding to their comprehension and it's keeping them engaged. So whenever you hear any sort of derivative of collaborate, working together. Okay, so because of our demographics that Kelly just talked about, we were really interested in enhancing our collaborative instructional practices here at school. We knew that this would help to not only support our ELs, but it would support all students, just like Lydia was talking about. We read this book here as a book study last year when we began our co-teaching, and it helped us to study collaborative practices that would really enhance not only the co-teaching portion of things, but our co-planning, our reflection, and our assessment when we were working with another classroom teacher. So based on our math data, we knew that there was a need to change what the instruction looked like during our core math time. So we decided to pair with classroom teachers that presented the highest need to do these co-teaching strategies and SciOp strategies. Math really has its own language, kind of like Lydia was talking about. There's an academic language that students have to master in order to be successful in math. So again, we partnered up with 3 different grade levels, and this wasn't something that really we could do very easily with how complicated our schedule is. So our IDS Laura, who is just a genius with master schedules, and Kelly, they over the summer came up with a restructuring of our master schedule, and it allowed us to align with specific grade levels through the day, so we could have that co-teaching and collaboration with our teachers. And the thing that was really big about this was, yes, we could have a co-teaching time, but we really wanted that common PLC and planning time. So with this restructuring of the schedule, we were able to do all those things. And then we also, as ELL teachers, really had to have a flexible mindset about what ELL kind of looks like during the day, and we've had to sort of change what our groups look like, change how we view ourselves as ELL teachers, and just kind of take a different approach. Okay, so this year we also started a curriculum pilot. So on top of, doing more co-teaching, we were also doing a pilot. Luckily, with Eureka Math Squared, which is the pilot that was chosen for us, it really lends itself well to SIOP just because of all the discussion within it. And we've had to have a shift in thinking when we're working with our co-teachers. Instead of it being, oh, this is what the classroom teacher does and this is what the ELL teacher does, we've had to share our ownership. And so when we're thinking about their academics in core math, that isn't just something a classroom teacher takes of. When we're thinking about their linguistic abilities, we're not just thinking, oh, this is what the ELL teacher needs to take care of. And then also just thinking about their social emotional well-being, we've really had to shift that thinking that it's a shared approach and it's collaborative. Then this year, we really like our book studies. This year we are revisiting the SIOP model just to kind of do a refresh. And we've been diving into those chapters and then bringing them back to the co-planning time that we have with our classroom teachers in order to tell them some strategies that we're learning or relearning, in this case, from the book. Okay, so this is just a sample lesson, a sample math lesson with second grade. I co-teach with a second grade teacher. We always have to think about, when we think about SIOP, we know that we have to not only integrate content instruction, but we're also integrating language instruction simultaneously. And then the techniques that we use with SIOP makes the content more comprehensible or accessible, and it develops students' language abilities within the academic language as well. So we start off with content objectives and language objectives. The content objectives tells us what the students need to be able to do, and so they understand what they need to be able to do by the end of the lesson. The language objectives really focuses on what students need to know about English in order to perform an academic task. And then we always explicitly teach our vocabulary, and we have gestures, and it's really fun to watch second graders while we're teaching because they'll be doing all these different gestures, and we know then that they're engaged and that they're comprehending what we're teaching. So for example, we've been talking about the composition and decomposition of numbers, and so whenever we say compose, kids are going like this and looking at us to make sure they decide, or decompose. And
that is so smart. Isn't that so smart? All those words that we didn't really understand when we were kids, and you're making it intuitive? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I got excited.
And it's just really fun to watch. Anytime we say efficient, because we're always trying to find efficient strategies. Quick and effective. So kids just the whole time while we're both teaching, they'll be doing all these different gestures.
And your songs.
Oh.
Do
not have me sing
the song. I was hoping that was one of these we were going to do.
Yes, they do love the songs that we come up with. And then we also incorporate a lot of language stems. Language stems are really good to always incorporate, especially even within math, just because of that academic language. It helps them, when we're discussing, it helps them have a place where they can go, or where they can understand what they need to be talking about with their partner in discussion. So we also always have real life and real people connections in our word problems. Whenever the kids see their own picture or a picture of their teacher up on the board, it's just an instant, they just pay attention to that word problem. So this is two of the second grade teachers, and the kids are like, oh, I know that person. It's like, oh. And then we use manipulatives a lot. We find, and
that's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time for Mrs. Morgan.
I should probably put that on there, actually. A lot of time. Next time.
And then we always use manipulatives. We know that manipulatives help lighten that language load, and Eureka really lends itself well, again, to the using a lot of those manipulatives. At the end, we always go over whatever the objectives were, and then the kids self-assess. They say, I can't yet, I can with help, or I can independently. And this self-assessment gives them a little bit of ownership over what they were just able or not able yet to do within our lesson. Okay, enough about math. Our next steps, we're going to try and tackle writing. We have just begun to scratch the surface with this. This is an amazing book, The Writing Revolution. Anyone who knows me has heard me talk about The Writing Revolution like a million times. Laura, I mean, I've talked about it so much. Our whole building has this book. There's been pockets of us who have read it, and we've been working with the 4th grade team to kind of start a co-teaching approach, integrating science and social studies content into the writing. And then we know that expository writing is really essential to that success of our students, and yet so many of them, not just ELL students, all our students, so many of them are really not proficient in this skill. And we just know that being able to communicate through writing is so crucial. So we hope that by utilizing all those PSYOP strategies, along with our learning about explicit teaching of writing, starting at the basic sentence level, that this will help make our students become more confident writers. That's kind of what's next for us.
Yes, thank you. That's kind of it, right?
So,
Yeah. Before I take questions, I was just going to kind of wrap up for our team and just say, I think you can kind of hear a theme here. We do see our students as all our students, and you can hear that through, they're not EL students, they're not Mrs. Morgan students, 1st grade students, they're all our students, and these strategies help all students. And that goes back to my percentages at kind of my beginning of the slide, is that all those percentages or kind of data points are there, those students are intertwined. Those facts follow different subgroups, right? And so good strategies are good for all students, whether you're a student that is FRL student or a student that's identified as ELL or as an eligible student as an IEP. These strategies are good for all students. And I think one thing that I can definitely feel like our team does well too is building the capacity of all our teachers here. They can't do it by themselves, so we have to have this collaboration and build the capacity. Collaboration, yes. Wasn't doing that. I talk enough with my hands, probably, but with not probably a good signal. But I do want to. I've worked with Sheila actually at Wickham too, so I did want to send a complete sincere thanks, because I know you guys have worked hard, and Sheila with the EL program in the district, and our team is I just can't say enough about them, so I do want to thank you for your time tonight and coming, and again, thank you guys for the opportunity. And kind of even like solidifying why we're kind of focusing on writing as our next step, because we know there's a need, but we also started with math this year too, and I did kind of, in a way, I don't know if I took the data point off of the slide or not, but at the very bottom, academically, like I said, we did have a shift with all of this, so we knew we needed to do something different. And we've worked really hard in our ELA, and we see that with what they naturally teach in ELL and what we're specifically strategically teaching in our core or in our interventions. And we've grown, our typical growth is 9% in a year. That's accelerated growth. And because typically you guys set like a 3% growth when we think of our test scores, and so last year we were 9% in reading, but we were only 2%, and that's not even a growth that we'd want in math, right? And so we knew we needed to do something different, and we do dig into the data and we look at what is it that we need to change and be responsive to, and so that's where we took on this math co-teaching. And we know also writing is another focus we'd like to do. We also are looking into, even just this year, thinking about, okay, 1st grade has a big percentage of students that qualify for ELL services. And so knowing that the better model is probably push-in or co-teaching, so instead of pulling out those 18 students at different times of the day, how can we work together and analyze what is it that they need to be successful and whose job is that going to be, what's your day going to look like? And so, so that is some next steps and conversations we are having. So I don't know that was, just wanted to clarify that. But what questions do you have for us? Maybe help you.
Trying to organize myself here. This is a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. I'm just appreciative that whoever asked for this. I watched the last one and I just don't know who asked for EL. Maybe English language should be the next focus, or maybe, so we appreciate
Well,
that.
it's very relevant
Yes.
to what's happening in our district. One of the persons that just talked said something, I think, about needing or benefiting from someone in your group who could manage the scheduling and trying to put times together.
That was genius, Laura.
Right. So is that an essential thing that has to occur?
Yes, because
within buildings, so
yes,
that it can happen, right?
and plus and minuses, right? We are a building that qualify for quite a bit of supports, right? And so that means it involves many different departments, ELL, special ed, title, we're a title building, and so who's available at what time, and what are the students not missing because they can't, we don't want them to miss core, and when do they, if they qualify for ELL, they usually typically also need an intervention reading and math, and so when does that happen, who provides that, and who's available in the morning versus who's available in the afternoon, because if you don't have a full-time person you're sharing, and so it is very, it's very strategic and it's a moving part all the time.
And that's something that could not be done by the principal very well?
Oh, we do it together.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I
Okay.
mentioned both of them, but they are just
Okay, I'm
scheduled
sorry.
and there's no task too hard that they can't like try and figure out. And I think the biggest thing too is just finding that co-planning time. Building that into the schedule has been a game changer, because last year we did co-teaching where we were able to figure out a common math time. But then it was the part where you could actually have PLC together and co-plan. We'd have to like try to, cancel classes or do this, and it just didn't work very well. So they somehow figured out how to make it work.
To piggyback off that, I do typically the master schedule with the specials and stuff, and so what some buildings do and don't do is then we do the whole master, I do the master schedule with special allocations and block out common planning time for the whole grade, every grade, the whole building. And then Laura and I work together and we map out all the instructional minutes and who's being pulled when and how that affects then basically their schedule, special ed schedule, and not all buildings do that, I should say. So that's kind of how we
So
do
I'm
it.
thinking, as a board member, my job is to provide resources. So if that's something that's needed.
We don't have any, Charlie.
We don't have any.
Yeah.
It's not this year, Charlie.
Yeah, we do
Good
spend
try.
time with the
Yeah.
principals to get together and talk about best practice around scheduling. We actually held a couple different
Yep.
workshops this
Okay.
summer for principals to come together. We are unique in the way that we do share a lot of resources. So as Kelly's saying, she's also got title teachers that serve part-time at Longfellow, maybe part-time at Lucas. And so thinking about those pieces too, so we'll bring everybody together and just look through their different schedules. I think that part that they're trying to really talk about is it's within that leadership is providing that infrastructure. How are we going to provide this protective time? Co-teaching is fantastic, but it's only as fantastic as the amount of time that you plan together and are able to align the standards into what instructional strategies you're going to employ. And so it's just spending that time on the forefront. I think Director Abraham could talk to you about scheduling until she's blue in the face. That is a lot of the work of the principal, but our IPSs are fantastic to help with that.
And
Well,
I
your
was gonna
time
say,
is
if you're
always
talking
your-
about resources, sorry, that's one I wouldn't want to lose, right, is the IBS, right? Because that's my resource, right? So, yeah, I'm just putting that out there. No pressure.
Well, that's,
See, So you did it now.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
That was your team and I recorded it.
Yeah, Brady, take you down.
The thing I was going to say is that our time reflects our priorities, right? And so the great thing that Kelly and the team were able to do is when they sat in their schedule, they knew what their priorities were. It's easy for us to always focus on the problems. Longfellow easily could have been a problem for us, right? When you look at that demographic shift, we've dealt with all kinds of situations in the district sometimes when we've seen that demographic shift, and what do we hear, right? Well, the building's on fire, we have all these problems and all these needs. And what Kelly and team have done is they've just knocked it out of the park, right? We don't hear those things. And they're having success. The 9% reading, we just set a strategic plan goal at 6%, right? And so they were going above and beyond. Well, they're not happy with 2%. So now what they do, they looked at their schedule about what can we do there. So what Eliza's talking about is then when we take effective practices from a building and try to mirror those then in some other buildings, right? Because this, where those things have become, and I'll just say it, an excuse for us in the past, right? This shows us it doesn't need to be an excuse, right? It doesn't make it hard, or it doesn't make it easy, it makes it hard, and that's hard work that the staff is committed to shifting mindset and how we're gonna approach that, but it can be done, right? And I think that's the thing we have to remember is that we can have success there, and yes, I'm saying the resources tongue in cheek, and we've talked to Kelly, right, about some things, and we know that we have to continue to look for ways we can do that. We do know our other reality, right, about the message I put out before this one that wasn't as fun, right, to everybody. But I do think those are ways we have to learn from each other, and we also need to take time to celebrate when a building just took the challenge in front of them and knocked it out of the park with it, right? And that's what Longfellow did.
If I may, it was a lot of work, but the brain power behind this. I mean, what you guys just did, your example, teaching us in Spanish first.
It was your idea.
It was excellent. It was excellent.
Thank you.
It was excellent. And then talking about the gestures and how you're having children learn the way they're learning. And then the studies you're doing with different books. Guys, that's I mean, this is so impressive. So impressive. So I'm just hoping that we can, as Liza said, get some sort of template. Of course, each school has its different challenges, but for heaven's sakes, you guys had a list of challenges. So if there's a way, you know, and I know you're already working so hard on it, but to try to get as much as you can reduced to writing and the schematic of it, how helpful that would be for the district. I mean, this is like doctorate publication stuff that you're doing. It is, though. It's so impressive. So I just hope that we can find ways to harness what you're doing and use it in all of the other buildings that have similar challenges, perhaps fewer challenges than Longfellow has.
I have a question kind of district-wide. Some of this data I saw was surprising, like that over maybe 50% of our EL students are Spanish-speaking, and to hear that 50% of your kindergarten class is EL. Not this year, because we don't have any money, but are there opportunities for maybe something, and the push in instead of pull out, targeted bilingual classrooms at our elementary age to where we see buildings with significant 50% classrooms, and then we really do have a push in because everyone's in the class learning together. Is that something that would help EL students, or is that just something totally different?
Well, a dual language model can be incredibly beneficial to all students, correct? And there are certain proportions of students and languages when those can become more of a reality, let's say. And currently, the last time we looked at it, and it was Weber and Hills, and just certain grade levels that probably would qualify for that. Spanish at Hills and Arabic at Weber. But yeah, that's a lot of resources. That's a whole new model that takes a lot of dedication to make that a success, and something that we have brought up several different times. And we've even talked with Hills about it before. It's just not something that we've gone forward with yet.
The other thing I'm wondering about, is there a sweet spot? So we have targeted staff to student ratios, right? But is there a sweet spot in which co-teaching can occur versus we're pretty maxed, co-teaching isn't going to happen there? And what is that student to teacher ratio?
I don't know. I can tell you perhaps we're sitting in that sweet spot, maybe. And it's also, I think, a tribute to the group size that they're willing to take and still be effective as well, right? Like, I think they're willing to take a group size of 8 or 10 and know that they're not going to choose to do 2 different size 4 groups, and instead they're going to do a size a group of 10 and be effective, and then use the other time to know that in their schedule they're gonna push in or co-teach, right? And so it's just thinking about it a little bit differently, and that's a discussion we had is, you know, how do we know if this is working? How do we know? So we're trying to analyze, you know, not that we're gonna do this and then hope that it works, but we're really analyzing that, and I know like resources and the budget is tight, and if we would ever get our allocation adjusted and still sit at 80 and go down to 2.5 teachers or whatever, then that would likely stop, right? That the model that we're trying and that we are seeing great benefits from would likely have to stop if we continue to have the district have this pull-out model.
The other things that we've done just as a system is to train whole building staffs in SIOP.
Yeah.
And so just as the Levy principle, we took our whole entire staff through SIOP because gen ed teachers need to understand how to do that sheltered instruction to be able to provide more models that are visuals and using gestures. And so that's another piece. And then also through, and I know Kelly does this, is just through assigning students into classes and thinking about if we've got 5 or 6 ELL students, if we put them, there's also guidelines and recommendations to never have, you know, over a third of a class, but when you're thinking of it, it just allows for more flexible co-teaching and to just get a little bit more creative with the way that we're providing services to our kids.
Do you guys want to mention like how classes are co-taught at the secondary level? I think we've talked about that before, but it maybe is a good reminder.
So if, so currently what we, and definitely we've been focusing more on the high school just because of the credits that students are needing to earn, you know, for graduation purposes. But we do, so with basically the first 2 years of courses for students to earn credits towards graduation, and we have sheltered courses available, which are taught by the content teacher, and then an EL teacher is also a part of that course. And those are for our beginner students and our intermediate level students that are enrolled in those classes. So it's kind of like a mini, I don't want to say like a beginner program, but that's what we have established at each of our high schools for the first 2 years are those core courses that can give them the graduation and online, or not online, but on grade level courses that they can enroll in.
Do you have any comments about what you think the kids are feeling in this building this year and last year?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
Sure. Do you have any comments about what you think the kids are feeling in this building this year and last year?
Oh, I think that they're
They love
happy.
their teachers.
They're happy to come every day, and I think I think the feedback that we get from parents or just the survey data, like you can just tell they're happy. They're happy to be here from just if they've been that second or third grade or fourth grade class with COVID, they're happy to be in the building. Period. And they love. You can just, again, we view, I think here we just have that community where they're all our kids. So our kids know all staff very well, and so they're very comfortable with most any teacher coming in and out, supporting, going to them. We also, I mean, this isn't part of the presentation. We do leagues here, which is we take our whole K-6 and in our building, and we make multi-age groups, and we meet once a month, so we can have a bigger kind of big buddy system and make that community here. So we try to really do a lot of variety of things. But I could talk about long time.
I gotta say, with all the illness in the last couple of weeks, I've had to fight with kids to get them to let me give them a nurse pass to go down to the nurse because, I don't want to go home. Like, you're burning up. You've got to go to the nurse. No, they're going to send me home. Like, who are you?
I would like to mention that for the board to think about as we're dealing with some negative positions or perspectives about public ed. This presentation is one of those that's going to stick with me throughout Christmas break, and I'm just going to think about how you framed this whole thing, and all of you did it as this is a positive, but it is a positive. It's not just because you framed it that way. I'm so moved by it, and I think as a board maybe we need to consider whether that's something that would be a good subject for a guest opinion, something like that. This is the dream, what you guys just described. This is making our diversity into the gift that we know it is, and figuring out how to make it a gift for every single person. not the people that brought the diversity, but everyone involved. So I just think, thank you for doing such a good job articulating it. And if the board decides to do something like that, a board member may be contacting you for quotes.
I welcome you guys anytime. We love to show off the great things happening at Longfellow. It's not just, this is an opportunity for us to talk about ELL, but we have great things happening in Longfellow all the time. And also it's the support of our district and our leaders at the district level too, right? Because I go back and forth and ask them all the time and just, this is what we're doing here, you should come see it, or hey, what other thoughts do you have? What's happening out in the district? But you're right, like, public ed can get such a negative, but yeah, there's so many great things happening. So many great things. And we were actually supposed to have a multicultural night on Thursday, and we already rescheduled that to January at this point. But that, and I know, like, there's always a caution around, having one night is a celebration, but our families love that, all families. And it's a multicultural night because it's not just about, if you're a Spanish speaking family, it's all, if you want to bring soul food, if you want, like,
There's a lot of great.
it's just a lot great celebration, and we have little performances, and it's just fun. It's a great community, like, the Longfellow community loves to attend that, and it's celebrated. Yeah, so.
Yeah, our kids went to Longfellow, all three of them, and I'm so happy to see that the Longfellow spirit is being continued, long past their time here.
Any other questions or comments anybody wants to make? Okay, well, I've asked for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you, guys.